Welcome back to Unapologetic and Free
We are sisters by blood.
and Friends by Choice.
Hi, everybody. This
Hey.
is Shar and Lakia. We're back again with a new episode. And today we're going to talk about forgiveness. They say that to err is human, but to forgive is divine. But if we're being honest, most days staying angry feels a lot more human and a lot more satisfying. We have all been there, playing back a conversation in our heads, nursing a grudge like it is a prized possession, or waiting for an apology that we know deep down is never coming. We have been told that forgetting and forgetting is the high road, but what if the road is washed out? What if the person who hurt you is not sorry? Today, we are peeling back the layers on one of the most misunderstood emotions in the human experience. We're asking the tough questions. Is there anything that is truly unforgivable? Can you move on without an apology?
Ooh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff, y'all. And so, as always, we are posing questions on Facebook, and we posed a question on Facebook about today's topic to give our followers, you guys, a chance to give your thoughts. And so, this segment is called Social Media Said What?
What they say.
So, this is the question that we asked. The question was, who was the hardest person you had to forgive? And so I'm just going to go through and read some of the responses that we were given, and then we kind of, we'll go from there and get this episode launched. But who was the hardest person you ever had to forgive? Responses were myself. I saw a lot of them that said myself, my father, parents, and then myself, cousin, and then self, my daughter. It's been a process. And one of the most boldest statements, which I really couldn't use the actual word that the person used, but I'm using my abuser. So that
Mm,
y'all know certain words we can't say on here. But
that's
in
right.
other words, my abuser was one of the hardest people that had to forgive. Now, Shar, I'm going to give you a chance to answer. Mine, though, was myself first. Like, I feel like first and foremost, one of the hardest people to forgive was myself because I had went through like some bad mistakes, a period really of bad mistakes, poor choices. It's self-inflicted harm to myself. I want to say that I was hardest to forgive myself because I had self-inflicted harm. What about you, Shar?
Same is like forgiving myself was one of the hardest things because you play it over in your head and I'm like, you knew better. How could you let yourself get in that situation? Um, Another I had to forgive hardest was forgiving my parents. My mom and my dad, and some things that went on that I perceived growing up that I felt like um, should have been different. And even my kids, I went through a divorce. And so there were some things that transpired in that, and I had to forgive my kids. Um, let's talk about what is the textbook definition of forgiveness or to forgive. Stop feeling angry or resentful, huh, towards someone or an offense, flaw, or mistake. Forgiveness is the action or process of forgiving and being forgiven. That
That's
was it.
good. Stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone for an offense, flaw, or mistake. Like a mistake. We struggle forgiving people for a mistake. That we all make mistakes, right? But that's what that means to textbook. When
But
I
then
think
the
about
flaw,
right. Oh, it's
because
meaning it's just a flaw that the person have. You gotta forgive the flaw. What's a flaw that you think is
oh God,
for me,
what's the
it's the way certain people chew gum. That's a flaw they have. And and according to this definition, I can struggle forgiving somebody who can't control how they chew gum. That's a flaw.
Well, for me, what's a flaw? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Makes you think though, right? Forgiveness is the offense, because we talk about, it's easy to think about the offense, but it's a flaw. Again, you got to forgive the flaw or the mistake that somebody made, or so that's pretty interesting. And I know for me, just when I think about what forgive and forgiveness is, it's when the thought of the offense no longer causes me pain,
okay,
or
okay.
when I think about the person, I'm not still upset or have any negative emotions to it.
And yes, I can see that.
And then getting over it. I know I've forgiven, or I forgive when I'm getting over it. That's what it means. Like I got over it and I'm just over it and it's done and I don't care. I'm not thinking about it anymore. No emotions behind it. What about you?
Um, Agree with what you said. When the thought of whatever it was that caused me pain no longer lives rent free in my head, and it no longer makes me feel bad inside, then I know I'm at peace with the situation.
That's good. Being at peace with it. That's another good way of
Hmm.
looking at how do you know you right forgive. If when there's forgiveness involved, do you have any peace with the situation? Um, Why do you think forgiveness is so hard, though? Let's get into our first real big discussion. Why do we think forgiveness is so hard? And I mean, it feels difficult, right? When we say hard, why it feels so difficult? And sometimes before anything has even happened, you've already told yourself, "Oh, I'm how hard it's going to be," or that you can't forgive. I think about people who say, "Oh, I can't forgive that. Oh, I'll never get over that." Right? You're already kind of making it difficult. But some of the things about why it feels so difficult,
Or here's one: I'm not ready to forgive yet.
yes, but it's still, we're talking about why is it so difficult? Why
Yeah.
do we even get in times where we say, "I'm not ready to," right? One of the things is your body remembers what happened. That's when we talk about that hurt. The hurt of the offense can trigger, right, those feelings of fear,
Hmm.
anger, stress responses, even after you decide you want to forgive. So let's,
That body is still.
you want to forgive, but the pain, like, and I know, and we're, I've been in situations where it felt like my heart, when people say your heart is breaking, that's the
Girl.
pain that can be inside when we're talking about difficult to forgive, because I want to forgive, right? Have you ever been in that place where it says, I want to forgive? I decided, look, I want to forgive, but
But
I
the
still
pain,
felt pain
yes, it felt
through
like you
it.
had a straight heart attack. Okay.
Difficult, right? That's what makes it difficult sometimes to forgive. Forgiveness can feel like it was okay. It's difficult, right, for me to forgive, because separating that, it's not okay what the person did, right? It's not okay, the offense, the flaw, the mistake. But we confuse forgiveness with excusing or minimizing or reconciling. But forgiveness is not calling wrong right. And our brain, sometimes our emotions don't
Uh,
know how to separate
the two.
that forgiveness,
Absolutely.
right, doesn't mean that they didn't do wrong. It doesn't mean you're excusing what they did. It doesn't mean any of that. They're two different things. But again, it's difficult because I don't want them to feel like it's okay.
And you feel like too like they won because you're forgiven. Like, oh, they won, or they don't even care that they hurt me or
Right.
whatever.
Which is not based on any fact, right? Even
Mhm.
if we get into that, it's just you don't know what a person knows or not, but the feeling, right? But we're talking about what makes it difficult. Excuse me. Is
And as
again,
we know, feelings are a terrible master.
that's right. That's right. Then it says reasons why it can be difficult is justice matters. Part of you may fear that letting go means the other person gets away with it,
Just said, or they
and
won.
your soul wants what's right. Right? I want you to be punished. I want you to feel sorry. But
I want you to
again,
feel the way that I feel.
right, but unforgiveness doesn't make the person right. Us not forgiving doesn't determine if that person will ever be sorry, right? And we're going to get into it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's not about, it's us feeling like the person's getting away with it. I can't forgive you because I don't want you to get away with what you did. Right?
Hmm.
I'm sorry, y'all. You can go ahead, Sharp.
All right. Trust and forgiveness are different. It's a fine line between trust and forgiveness. You can forgive someone and still need distance, boundaries, or time before any relationship is safe again, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. It's been happening all day, but we're going to press forward. But
Because that
yeah,
means this is a topic that needed to be
right.
talked about.
But yeah, you can still forgive someone and still be distant. That's now depending on when, if you're the one that need forgiveness versus the one
The
that
one-
is forgiving, that's hard, right? Being able to say, yes, it's distance. I want to forgive you or I forgive you, but I need to separate myself. I need to put some distance or I need to set some boundaries up that's going to govern how we move forward, right? In
Mhm.
this. So we're still talking about just those things that make it difficult, right?
Right.
Wanting to feel safe again. You don't know when you're going to feel safe again. So I feel it's hard to forgive because I don't know when and how I'm going to feel safe. In some crazy way, we think holding on to it is going to make us feel safe by holding on to the unforgiveness, right? Not choosing to forgive.
But then that goes back into the beginning when you were talking about those triggers and your body remembers and that trauma,
Yeah,
you
so
know.
that also makes it difficult. And then the wound may be deep, right? If there was a betrayal, repeated harm, or trauma, forgiveness is often a process, not just a moment. And
Woo! A
again, it's a
process.
process, not just a moment. Because even again, if I decided that I want to forgive you, that's still a process that it takes. And not everything does have, maybe there are some things that you're might be able to get over quick, but then still we know that forgiveness is a process. And I think both sides of whatever's happening on that fence, right, have to acknowledge and realize that forgiveness is a process. um,
And you can't rush it sometimes. People process things at different speeds. And so with the processing, you just got to take it one step at a time. And then if you are the one that's sitting in the seat of forgiveness, it's going to take, like, it may feel like it's a long time. And you're thinking like, why is this person not forgiving me yet? Like, I'm ready to,
that's
patch
right.
this up.
That's right. In there.
All right. So, moving on. It is so difficult because who it was that caused you hurt and pain. If you never thought in a million years someone who you trusted could cause you emotional damage, you don't know how to process what happened. You want that person to feel the way they made you feel, which is where revenge may come into play, which makes it difficult.
Yes, it definitely makes it difficult. And it's that difficulty can be based on who the offender is, what happened, right? The betrayal, right? People who you never again expected it to come from, and then it comes from, right? The trauma behind,
The trauma
you know,
behind it.
there's trauma behind when you are in a position where you have to forgive, depending on what you need to forgive, right? We're
Hmm.
being honest, depending on what's happening and what needs to forgive, because really, no matter how hard and difficult the offense, we can forgive,
You
right? It's
can. It's a
nothing
choice.
that, right? It's a choice. There's nothing, if we be real, right, that we can't, right? But we can choose to feel like I can't. My body is telling me I can't, right? Depending on what really happened, right? And how I feel like that affected me or what that trauma was behind whatever that issue is,
And the willingness
right?
want to forgive.
And again, willingness could be even for a minor offense. It takes
Hmm.
willingness to forgive, right? It could be like the definition of flaw or a mistake, right? Even if it was nothing significant, it could still take willingness to forgive. It's still a choice. And then, of course, the more
Mm-hmm.
difficult, the harder the offense was, the betrayal, whatever it is. And again, that increases that willingness to not
To
want to
want to,
forgive,
yeah,
right? I definitely
absolutely.
think that has a lot to do with when we talk about forgiveness and making that decision, but it still goes back to being willing to forgive, even when we want to forgive, right? We just, our flesh is weak, our flesh is involved, our
So like the
emotions,
spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
right? Our flesh is involved, and that revenge part
That
of it, right? Is
revenge.
that I want you to feel what I
Feel the
felt.
same way that I felt.
I want you to experience it. And again, we have no control over how the other person is going to feel. Even if we did the same thing that that person did to us, feeling like we're getting revenge, you don't get to control how that other person is going to feel.
Absolutely. And you don't get to control whether the outcome of that tit for tat type thing.
Right. While you're trying
Oh,
to get revenge.
right, you hurt me, so I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna hurt you the same way.
Right. Not even realizing that you don't control the hurt. You can say you want it, but you don't know how that person is going to feel and if that's even going to hurt them or not, right?
That's
But we
true.
don't think about those things. We don't take that when we're just out to get revenge.
And I think also too another reason why it's difficult is hold on. Ooh, ugh,
Bless you.
Jesus is I just lost my train of thought. Is like you never again thought that that person that you have, I don't know, the situation that you have laughed with, cried with, been vulnerable with, how they could possibly do something to whatever magnitude it was, and you're just blindsided by it.
Yeah, that's going to bug me on until I fix that hair. All right. So, is there a cost of not forgiving? I feel like just initial costs is loss of time with people you care about, right? Like it's especially if it's somebody close that you're needing to forgive, then you lose that time with them, right? Loss of sleep. I know for me, in those times when I'm dealing with unforgiveness or something happened, somebody offended me, I may lose sleep because I'm thinking about it. I'm rehearsing it. I'm going over and over again in my head. I can't believe this. How could they? Oh my
Mhm.
God. And then even that revenge, and you lose sleep behind the cost of not forgiving, right? But even the
Right.
flip of that is even forgiving, right? Because it's a process, you can still lose sleep. But just some initial thoughts for me, cost of not losing sleep. And then I am going to throw this in here. The spiritual cost could send you to hell, right? Like feeling, going with
That's right.
unforgiveness, holding aught in you could cause you to miss some things because
You
that's the
holding on.
cost, right?
Yeah, the
You're
cost.
holding on to that unforgiveness, right? You haven't forgiven. And again, we just don't know the day and the hour that our Lord is coming back. And so that could cost us from not forgiving.
So yes, there are some costs to not forgiving. Um your health could start you could start having health issues, high blood pressure, heart problems, mental health issues. You become paranoid. Like you just said, you can't sleep, which is a form of insomnia and depression. So you're losing your peace by holding on to unforgiveness.
Yeah, so medical issues. Definitely you can end up with medical issues,
Mental.
mental issues, stress. Stress can happen for way less things. So stress is definitely one of those things.
All right. So, why is forgiveness hard in relationships?
So when we talk about relationships, we're talking about romantic partners.
So, yeah, let's talk about romantic partners. So, yeah, emotional closeness. So, yeah, let's say intimate partners.
Right.
So, betrayal hits harder when expectations are high.
So yeah, that definitely goes back to what you said when you have this expectation of somebody close to you that you don't expect that from, right? And especially in a romantic partnership, in a relationship, you're not expecting the person that's closest to you to be the one to betray you, right? And we're talking about a betrayal, but remember, I just want to keep reminding us that that forgiveness could be a mistake, it could be a flaw, it could be an offense, right? And then even when we're
Absolutely.
looking at those offenses, it's levels to the offense that
It's
makes it
levels to
higher,
the
right?
offense.
So,
Yes.
because I want to spend some time here, because we're teachers at heart. We work in your profession. You're a teacher, but I'm just saying, because we're talking about forgiveness, but it could be something as simple as somebody stepped on your toe, right? It was an accident, even in a romantic partnership. So your partner forgot that, and I'm gonna just throw this one out here. I don't really know how that can happen, but again, we're talking. He forgot your birthday.
Oh, that's
That's a
that's easy to forget.
so that could cause you to a person to not want to
Yes.
forgive because the partner forgot the birthday, right? Or somebody was supposed to, in romantic partnerships, right? He said he was going to take out the trash. He didn't. That's an offense that you could be a mistake he made or she made. They didn't do something. So we're not just making this forgiveness thing just about, oh, this major betrayal.
Right.
Yes, there's betrayal. Yes, but then there's also, y'all, just those basic things that, believe it or not, there are people, and I'll just talk about me. Like, there was times in my first marriage where I held on to stuff, simply something as simple as he didn't take out the trash. And here I am mad 2 weeks later because you didn't take out the trash 2 weeks ago. That's craziness, hindsight, but these are things that you could get caught up in, not forgiving somebody over a mistake because they didn't take the trash out.
And they don't even know that you holding on to this because you ain't communicate with them.
But they
That
might know.
they might.
Because, yeah, because even with that, I'm telling you that I'm mad at you because you didn't take out the trash. But he didn't, the other person then moved on. Okay, my bad. I'm sorry. I didn't take out the trash. But here I am 2 weeks later, still mad
Still,
because you didn't take out the trash. That cost me time. That cost me stress. That cost me unnecessary things because I'm stuck on, couldn't get over that you didn't take out the trash. And I'm saying that because that was me at one point in my life. And I'm hoping to be able to help somebody if you're in a place where you're finding more wrong in what a person's
right.
doing. On these little things that you can't get over. Because if we definitely can't get over the little thing, like you didn't take out the trash, there's no, of course, it's
Man,
going to be difficult when something major or a betrayal
something
happens
major happened.
with that partner,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
that even
Absolutely.
but I wanted to say too, even with that expectation being high, even in that same example of they didn't take out the trash, my expectation was so high that I don't expect for you to ever miss a day of taking out the trash, right? So I had this expectation that you're not gonna miss it, and then you miss it, and now again I'm offended, I'm bothered because I had this expectation on you that was so high because I put you in a place where I felt like, okay, surely you ain't gonna do this, and then we get disappointed.
And then again, the expectations that you set on other people may not be their expectations for themselves.
Right. And you're sitting here mad about something, right? And so that's how subtle
And trivial,
unforgiveness can
yes.
be if we're not careful.
Absolutely. That was, man, that's a good one. All right, here's one. Repeated offenses versus one-time mistakes. And you kept saying it could be a mistake or it could be a flaw. So what's the difference?
So, for me, the repeated is you doing it multiple times.
Okay.
I think about cheating. We're talking about relationships. I feel like cheating
Hmm.
is one where typically that happens more than once, right? They say once a cheater, always a cheater. I ain't saying that. They said that. Once a
They said
cheater,
that.
they said that, not me. But once a cheater, always a cheater. So it goes back to that repeated behavior, right? Versus, are there times when, yes, this is just one time and never happened again, right? Versus that repeated. I think about lying, right? If you get caught in a lie, repeated
Repeated lying.
lying versus
Absolutely.
one time you got caught in a lie. Um,
Absolutely. And then you said something too is like the repeatedness. You're continuing to do it versus, or it's a one time, or if it was, if it's repeated, you might be able to, if it's a gap in between the offenses, but
okay,
if,
that's good. How
but if,
long since the last time, right?
absolutely, versus if it's every month I'm having to talk to you about this particular issue, that's a problem.
So you think when we were talking about how difficult it is, you think it would be more difficult to get over if the repeated offenses were spaced out versus if they're back to back? Would it be harder? So my question is, you think it's easier to forgive when the repeated behavior is spaced out versus when it's repeatedly back to back?
For me, yes. I can't speak about nobody else. I can just say for me, if they're spaced out, it's easier for me to forgive versus um back to back occurrences. What
I
about you?
agree. I agree. I feel like even just when we talk about the body and the brain and the mind has had time to process and get over it, right? So then if it's spaced out and it happens again, yeah, you might still feel a little bit because you remember, the body remembers, oh, this happened before, right? And
Mm.
but versus like you said, if it's back to back, then I ain't even really had a chance to heal all the
Even
way.
processed the last time
Right, and here you
that you
are
did
cheating
something.
again. Yes.
Absolutely. All right. Fear of being hurt again.
Yeah. I think that's too where revenge comes into play, why we think revenge is necessary because I'm afraid you're going to hurt me again. So I feel like I want to do something in revenge to somewhat try to prevent you from hurting me again. Right. But in those relationships, in the emotional right of, man, I just don't want to be hurt again. And even that, the reality is we have no control over that.
We do not.
You don't
And
have any
then
control over being hurt again.
the flip of revenge is you put up a wall, you close yourself off. You don't open yourself up to be able to be hurt again.
Yeah.
So
Because
you
you're so set on I don't want to be hurt again
right.
that now I'm not even opening up. I think about, people in relationships, right? Maybe they have, right, you were hurt, you were in you, and so now you decided I'm not even going to date anymore because I don't want to be hurt again. I'm afraid I'm going to be hurt. I'm still holding on to whatever happened in my last relationship because I don't know how to set boundaries. And I know this is not a
Exactly.
relationship episode, but really that for people, I feel like it comes down to the boundary of not being able to set a boundary in the new relationship. So it's easier for me to say I'm just not going to date at all because I don't know. Maybe you don't know. So I don't just want to say it like you can't, but maybe you don't know how to set the boundary, right? And to be able to do it, date, right? So I'm just going to say, nope, I'm just not going to date at all because I don't want to get hurt again. But there are ways, right? You can see therapy, counseling. They can give you tools to help you put boundaries in place to reduce, right? Because again, still can't control whether or not somebody's going to hurt you. Even saying I'm not going to date anymore doesn't guarantee that you still or can be offended by other people close to you. But it would be helpful to know kind of how can I put some things in place to try to limit that. I think about being proactive. I think about risk assessment. That's the word I was looking for. Risk assessments, right? You can do things to reduce the chances to try to reduce. Let me rephrase that, to try to reduce the chances because again we only have so much only control over what we do, not what anybody else does. But those boundaries are a way to put this, to do that risk assessment to say, well, if I put these boundaries in place, then maybe that will reduce that. So you don't have to just completely cut yourself off, right, to not dating because you don't fear of being hurt again.
And see, we talked about that earlier too, like putting boundaries in place or whatever for and we're probably going to touch on it later on in this about,
But just in case we don't, we're here.
how, how not to be hurt again is to set up those boundaries. Or when you decide that you're ready to forgive somebody, put those boundaries in place.
And there's no cookie cutter boundary, right? The boundaries are based on the situation, it's based on the offense, it's based on the person. So we can't say, oh, just do this, it'll work every time. You really have to think about the relationships you have. Who is the person that you're putting the boundary? I think about, because I want to give an example, right? Like if you're in a romantic partnership and maybe let's say it was cheating, right? A boundary that you could put in place is that, hey, call me by a certain time, or let's agree that you need to be home at a certain time, right? That could be a form of a boundary that you put in place until that trust is rebuilt, right? And then maybe you can release that. But that might be an example of a boundary that you could put in place to be able to kind of reduce, well,
And then also too, another boundary could be, with depending upon how maybe your cell phone, maybe you don't have a lock on your cell phone, or if you do have a lock, your significant other has that passcode to be able to get in, and just monitor, what you're doing. If it's sharing locations, whatever boundary you want to put in place to be able to help you move on from the situation.
and I think too, when you're going to set those boundaries, you have to be talking to the person and y'all have to sit down together and come up with
And with those
what this
boundaries,
looks like.
yeah.
What do you need? You have to be honest enough with yourself to say, well, what is it that I need? What is it going to take for me to move on? Talk that over with the other person, find out where they are, and then y'all together come together to say, well, how are we going to move forward with this? What boundaries, what things can we put in place so that we can work towards rebuilding this relationship?
Right, because then that'll go with you put the expectation and the boundary on somebody that you didn't even get, they didn't even give consent
The
to,
buy-in, right?
to whatever boundary or expectation that you are trying to put in place.
Right. So why do you think we forgive strangers faster than the people we love? And for me, it's because I don't expect loyalty from a stranger. Like the simple layman terms I was come up with is I don't expect loyalty from a stranger. A stranger does not know me. I don't really know them. We go back to the expectations. My expectations for a stranger is a whole lot lower than the expectations of those people that are close to me. And again, it's based on what the offense is. Is it a flaw? Is it a mistake? Is it an offense, right? Going through those different things. And then who did it? What was the circumstances and the situation behind it? But for me, it just simply comes down to I don't have a whole lot of expectations on a stranger that I do on on the people close to me.
And I agree with that because for me, it's a stranger. That means I can cut the person off and not feel anything because I don't have to ever see them again.
That's
I don't
right.
have to interact with them again. I don't have to let them in my space. So it's not even really me forgiving you. It's just me saying, okay, it happened and let's move on.
But we got to be careful because we do want to make sure that we still forgive even the stranger because of the wound, right? The brain,
Oh,
the feelings. So if we don't deal with still the feelings, still what happened, even though that was a stranger, then I'll take that into future.
right. That's right. That's right. And then that's where prejudices and all that kind of
So we
stuff
still got to
come,
forgive the stranger.
will come into play based upon what type of stranger it was that offended or harmed or so.
Right.
Good point. Good point.
What about when we're talking about making it hard? What about when it's a lack of an apology? When the person don't say they sorry? I think that can definitely make it hard to forgive, but do they have to be sorry? Let's talk about it. Does the person have to really be sorry in order for you to forgive them? Just a question.
I'm gonna say for me, yes, and then I'm gonna look at your behavior afterwards.
Okay.
I'm gonna look at your actions. Because if you're truly sorry, then you're not going to continue to keep doing the thing that caused you to be in a place of needing forgiveness from me.
I guess I think about how many people say they're sorry, but they really aren't.
Yeah, but
And just because somebody gives you an apology, and again, just because somebody says they're sorry and they never do it again, does that mean they really are? Or did they just say that because that's what you wanted to hear?
what does that have to do with me? As
But
long
my
as
point.
I
So
mean,
it should, go ahead.
so if they're saying sorry to me and they truly don't mean it, but then their actions is going to for me is going to display that. it's you can only be some way, act some way for so long before your true nature start coming out.
My point is, because it does, what does it mean to you? That shouldn't be a predicator on whether you forgive or not. That's my point. Meaning, it shouldn't matter whether they're sorry, because you just said it doesn't matter whether they're really sorry or not. But why do we have to? Why do we feel like sometimes we got to hear the person say they sorry? Because again, whether they are or they're not, their behavior is going to show us whether they really are or not.
I think it's the acknowledgement.
That you want, not need. You don't. We
I
don't
don't need
need
it,
that.
but I want it.
Okay, so
Yeah, I
we're
want it.
establishing, right? You want it, but
I
you
want
don't
it. I don't
need
need it,
an
but I want it.
apology to forgive somebody. It is nowhere on the requirements that say I need an apology, because again, it's no
I think
guarantee.
it would. That's what makes it easier to.
Because I feel like I've said sorry to people before, and that didn't make them forgive me no faster. And I truly was sorry for what I did. So it really, I see. I'm not disputing that it makes it harder when they
No, no, no,
don't.
no.
I'm just
I'm
saying,
pondering and thinking.
if we really be honest, it doesn't matter whether they're sorry or not. And bringing the biblical aspect in for a moment, nowhere in scripture does it say forgive when they give you an apology. It
That's
says
right.
forgive, right?
That's
Jesus,
right.
Jesus,
77 times it.
exactly. And even that, when we think about Jesus and his teaching on forgiveness, it's just predicated on us forgiving,
Right.
not what the other person
We
does in
forgive
return.
because he forgave us.
That's right. That's right. Right. And again, 70 times 70. Be quick to
70 times
forgive.
70.
All of those things, right? That if you're a believer, then none of these things really the lack of apology doesn't matter. Even the repeated behavior, because he says 70 times 7. So
Girl,
that
it's
means,
that flesh,
right. It
that
means
human
Jesus
nature.
already told us it was going to be repeated behavior. That's why he said 70 times, I believe. That's just Lakia saying. He said that because he already knew it was going to be repeated. And even repeated in multiple different offenses. And then the same offense was going to come. How
That's
many
true.
of
That's
the
what he
same
said.
people, right, offended Jesus back to back to back? The
That's what
same
he
thing.
said.
But you still got to forgive. You still got to forgive. So for sure, it makes it harder when it's a lack of an apology. It makes it harder, but not undoable. That's all I was trying to get to, is that it makes it harder for sure when they don't. But it definitely does mean you can't do it if they don't. You can still forgive if they never give you an apology. But for me, between those two, the harder one is the repeated behavior,
You know?
right? Not so much the lack of apology. It's nice. I think about our mom, she always wanted to make sure we did certain things. You need to say you're sorry. Even as
Yeah,
kids, we're
yeah,
taught, oh, you need to
yeah.
say you're sorry. I teach my kid, you need to repent. You need to say you're sorry. But still, at the end of the day, it's the repeated behavior.
That's right. That the repeated behavior.
Now, here's a question, since we're talking about how, forgiving and 70 times 70, is there a such thing as forgiving too quickly?
I think it depends on if there was a miscommunication and your actions after the incident.
What
Like
do you
you
mean?
haven't like you haven't the person you're just automatically saying you're sorry. I mean, you forgive them, but they haven't. And hear me out. We you really shouldn't have to do anything for forgiveness, but there is really something that for me, like you have to say some type of remorse, some type of acknowledgement, some type of accountability of your part played, as well as my accountability for whatever part I played in uh, you needing forgiveness or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, for me, it just depends.
Yeah. And again, the real talk answer is yes, you can forgive too quickly. That brother cheated on me. I don't know that I want to just be quickly to just forgive you right now, right away, right? I need to see what are you going to do different, right? So I get it. I definitely feel like it's a such thing. That don't mean it's right, to say it's a such, forgiving too quickly, because I'm just trained to know that you just need to be quick to forgive. But there is times when you feel like, okay, that's too quick.
Yeah.
That's too quick, right?
And
And
it's
then
too,
two, I think back to the repeated.
especially if it's a repeated,
Oh, I was just about to say it goes back to the repeated
it's
behavior,
just a
right? You done
repeated
did this
behavior.
right multiple times, and I can't be it is too quick to forgive you if this the fifth
Right.
time. So now again, I can't be too quick now because this is happening too often, right? So
And it
that's
goes to the
real,
depending. Depends on the situation. It depends
right?
on what happened. It depends on who's involved. It's just not a
It's
cookie
something.
cutter.
Right. Something that I think about that my pastor always says, like when we talk about forgiveness, she's like, if I step on your foot, I forgive you for having your foot in my way.
No. No.
I stepped on your foot, but I forgive you for having it in
Because you
my
had to,
way.
girl.
So yes. Again, it depends on the offense, right? Cheating, you got to show the fruit of that repentance
That's
first.
right. The fruit of the
I need
repentance.
to see some change behavior. I need to see
And
some change
it's
behavior.
okay. Here's one that we didn't even discuss about. You said cheating, abuse,
Yeah. Whew.
forgiving when he or she he or she has put their hands on you and they said, "Oh, I'm not going to do it again."
Yeah, we can get into that if you want to go there because I talked earlier about forgiving my abuser, and even for
Hmm.
me, forgiving myself for some bad mistakes, right? I had to go through that where I was in a domestic violence situation. And again, initially, it starts out in the beginning, that one time, and it'll never happen again, right? And that's the cycle of, oh, it happened, forgive me, I'll never do it again until the next time. And then the next time came, and then it happened again. And oh, please forgive me. I'll never do it again. And then it got to a place over the course of that abusive relationship where He stopped saying he was sorry. He stopped
Mm-hmm.
saying, "I'm sorry." Because then I remember there was times when I would say, "Well, you didn't even say you were sorry, right?" Because after a while, when you're in an abusive relationship, it comes to, "I'm no longer sorry," and then the "it'll never happen again" didn't happen. He didn't say that anymore because it became that pattern, right? And so outside, getting out of that relationship, believe it or not, for me, it was harder for me to forgive myself than it was to forgive him. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, for me, I'm full transparency. When I left that relationship, I went into a spiritual growth center where I was able to get spiritual nurturing. I went to a spiritual hospital that helped me, believe it or not, be able to forgive him faster than I was able to forgive myself. It took me
Wow.
the longest time, even in a spiritual growth center where I went to get restoration. It took me longer because I was mad at myself for allowing
Forgive.
it,
Hmm.
for choosing it, for not seeing the signs, for not leaving sooner. And as this is not a domestic violence show, we will do that one day. But when we're blaming the person for staying, why did you stay so long? Why didn't you leave? And I just want to advocate that it's not always that easy to leave. Depending on what type of domestic violence situation you're in, I didn't have options all the time to just leave. There's mental, psychological things that the abusers put women through that you think you can't leave. You get trained to think you cannot leave. So when it's easy on the outside looking in, why didn't you leave sooner, right? So even that I was going with, that's what made it that much harder for me to forgive myself. Was
Hmm.
thinking about all of those things. Why didn't I leave sooner? How did I allow myself to do this? I should have saw the signs. All these things, right? But it was easier. So in an abusive relationship, right, when you're saying forgiving too quick, forgiving too quick after that first time. Depends
Hmm.
on the history. Did you know that there was a history of this? But
And
one
then
time,
also giving the person the benefit of the doubt that it
right.
could have been.
And I'm not saying there are not times and there are not examples where people can say, my partner, because domestic violence is not gender specific.
It is
So
not.
I'm not saying that there's not a time where a partner did it one time and never did it again. The likelihood of that is not, that's not the normal case one time.
Mhm.
So after the first time,
Time. Yeah.
it's already the odds that it's going to happen
Happen a
again,
second time.
right? So when we talk about forgiving too quickly, I'm going back to that, to your point, when you're being abused or when you were abused, right? It could be too quickly because there hasn't been any fruit to be ensured that that's not going to happen again, right? Behaviors
Correct.
have to change. So definitely, definitely, that's